All right, hey guys. We're back, and today we're going to be talking about the roots of the transition that happens in 1800. So the roots of the changes that happen in society that lead to sociology. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about three different time periods. And I apologize to you because it's not my fault, but they kind of overlap, at least the first two. We're going to talk about kind of how life was in the Middle Ages. Then we're going to talk about the big changes that happened during the Renaissance, and then how those changes kind of get brought together in our third period, which runs right up to, whoops, it shouldn't say S, which runs right up to 1800 and the Enlightenment. So that's going to be the plan. I'm going to probably try to go kind of fast because I'd like to get this all in one video. If you need to, obviously, stop it and rewind. All right, so we begin. The Middle Ages. They start with the fall of the Roman Empire in about 500, and they go to about 1500. There's nothing rigid about those dates, and especially this one. What we want to think is that because you can see the Renaissance sort of starts earlier, the Renaissance kind of eclipses the Middle Ages. That's what you want to think about. The most important thing for the Middle Ages is this is where we're going to kind of start out by laying this is how things were. In the last video, I told you it was this pattern that your life was going to be the same as your parents and their parents before them. So what was that life? That life for most people was a social system called feudalism. Feudalism basically had a few components. It was an agricultural economy, which of course it was because it was after the agricultural revolution, before the industrial revolution. So most people are farming. Second of all, you had a monarchical government. So in Europe, after the fall of the Roman Empire in about 500, it took a little bit of time, but people formed themselves into monarchies. Then what else? So we've got agriculture, we've got a monarchy, we've got Christian culture. Europe is basically completely Christian at this point in time. And fourth, a really, really rigid social system that is called the Great Chain of Being. If you took intro with me, you heard a little bit about the Great Chain of Being. Basically, the idea was there was a chain from the top, which is God, down to the bottom, which is like rocks. And everything that exists can be fit into that system. There's God, then there's the Pope, then there's kings, then there's the nobility, then there's the vassals that the nobility rent land to, then there's the serfs that work the land, and then there's animals, and but it's the main thing about it. First of all, it's a chain that goes from top to bottom. Second of all, that you have to understand is that it is completely rigid. You are born into a particular station, and you don't move from that station. So that's feudalism for us. And you can see that, especially if you are born into a station, you're probably born into the same station your parents were. You're going to live the same kind of life that they do. All right, so things are stable. They're not great if you're a serf. I mean, your life is basically hand to mouth, but it's stable. This changes in the Middle Ages, and changes in the Renaissance. And what changes it, the thing that gets it started is two discoveries. First of all, around 1300-ish, and there's nothing rigid about the year 1300, but people in Italy start to rediscover classical literature and classical art. And what that does is gets them thinking about the kind of ideas that existed before everybody was completely focused on Christianity. There's nothing wrong with Christianity, but some of these people, when they discover this, they're like, wait, there's a whole new set of ideas. We could be paying attention to these. Where could these possibly lead us? So that rediscovery of classical art, classical literature is one of the big discoveries that kicks off the Renaissance. The second big discovery is the discovery of the Americas by Christopher Columbus in 1492. This is a big deal because that rigid system of feudalism with Christianity, with this rigid great chain of being, basically people thought they understood everything. There was order because there was no reason to change anything. Then all of a sudden, it would be like, I mean, essentially like us discovering that there's a whole different species that lives on the moon that's intelligent life. People, it's even more than the moon. It's like there's another moon hiding behind the moon that we didn't even know was there, and there are people there. That's what the discovery of the Americas was like. So for the people in Europe, it was all of a sudden, wait, we didn't know this. There's this two huge continents, and there's a whole bunch of people there. What else might we not know? And it breaks apart that rigid system that existed, or at least starts breaking apart that rigid system that existed in the Middle Ages. So from those two big discoveries, I got to pull my script down a little bit. From those two big discoveries, we get two things: a system of ideas called Renaissance humanism, and a system of practices called the scientific revolution. The system of ideas for Renaissance humanism, it's got a lot of components, and it's kind of interesting if you are particularly interested in it, but that's not the point of this class. The main thing is that individuals matter. I told you that feudalism is based on Christianity, Christian culture, which is all about God. Nothing wrong with that. But Renaissance humanism says, well, wait a minute. What about us? The classics were all about human improvement and maximizing your life and fulfillment and stuff like that. What about that for us? So that's the main thing you need to know about Renaissance humanism. It's about individuals matter. We get a couple of beliefs that we hold today from there: individualism and equality of people. Those things you can see in the great chain of being. Individualism doesn't matter. You're a serf. Who cares about you? You're certainly not equal, and your life is insignificant in the big scheme of things. Hold on one second. My phone keeps pinging. So we've got individualism and equality that trickle down to us, but they start here in around the 1500s. The scientific revolution is a system of practices, and we would tend to think of it as confined to practitioners of science, but really it's more than that. I mean, we are all descendants of the scientific revolution, because what the scientific revolution says is that there's a systematic way we can study things. We can look at patterns, try to come up with explanations, see if they work. And this is something that gets us to think, well, wait, we as a species don't have to live based on what our parents did. We can discover maybe there's a better way of doing things. That's what we get out of the scientific revolution: the possibility of understanding things in a different way that could potentially lead to progress. Okay, so we've dealt with the Middle Ages, feudalism, and the great chain of being. Renaissance comes along and it shakes us up. All of a sudden we're thinking, well, wait, maybe we matter, and well, maybe we didn't understand everything. We can learn about it systematically and maybe even make things better. Those two ideas end up being brought together in the Enlightenment. And the Enlightenment starts around the 1600s. It's an intellectual movement. And the main idea here is to apply reason to human affairs. You can think of it as taking these ideas of systematically studying things and applying them to individual humans. People in the Enlightenment are concerned about things like individual liberty. Nobody thought about individual liberty in feudalism. It would not have crossed anybody's mind. The idea of how should we govern? Maybe just having a feudal lord who has a king above him is not the best way to do it. We could scientifically study what is the best way to organize human affairs. The last point about that is this idea of reason, of using logic and evidence to understand things, supplants tradition as the source of knowledge that people prize. And that's us right now, right? I mean, most of us would rather understand how something really works than just do it the way our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents did it. We might do that, but it would have to be based on some evidence that that was the best way to do it. We are children of the Enlightenment. Bam, that's it. All right, so what we're going to do, that's it for this video. What we need to do in the next one is look at, okay, so what changes did they make? So this Enlightenment idea of arranging human affairs according to logic and evidence, what kind of changes are going to be made that are going to change us from living under this feudal way of doing things into something else? There are going to be two people that we're going to study in particular. It's an oversimplification, but it's one that makes sense. One of them is going to redefine how we govern ourselves. The other is going to redefine how our economy works. Both of which we live under right now in America. The idea of political liberalism, which comes from John Locke, and the idea of a market economy, which comes from Adam Smith. Those are going to be our next two videos. So I'll see you next time.